All right. So we're going to debrief from the Jody Sue Kelly webinar, and then Gina's going to go over the new customer self-service portal. And then we'll have some discussions about what's new and any questions that you all have about the portal. We'll handle it then. Before we go to the Jody Sue Kelly portion, I want to take a moment to make sure all of our trainers are on the call. So Robert Trapp,
Yeah,
are you
I
on?
don't know. I think he left for the day. I think he
Oh,
left.
and his laptop's been comprehend or
Uh-oh. Dang, Sarah,
compromised.
you would figure that out, huh? Hello, I'm here.
All right, hi Robert. Is Joel on the call?
Yes, I am.
Hi Joel. All right, and who's here from LBS 7?
Tina's here.
All right, hi
Morning.
Tina. All right, and then do we have Lisa from 10 and 11? Don't see. Oh, yep. Hi Lisa. Just saw your name. David Taylor,
Good morning.
morning. Tori, are you here from 17? Not seeing you on the screen. Sandy or Haley from 22 and 24. All right, hi there. And then we have Robert Engel from our southernmost LBS.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, awesome. All right, Gina, if you can grab the slides. All right. So before we kick off, we wanted to have a quick moment where we talk about last week's webinar and really talk about what connections did we make from the customer centered design conversation to this transition to IWDS 2.0. And anyone can share their thoughts. How many of you were on last week's webinar? We'll start there.
This was the
I,
Wednesday webinar with Jody Sue Kelly.
I was there, Joel.
Oh, all right, Joel. What connections did you make from the conversation we had with Joey Kelly and IWDS 2.0 transition?
Well, I mean, the sort of focus of her talk was mainly dealing with, um, the customer that we normally deal with. Um, Whereas with this, I think of our customers as the people we're going to be training. So it's going to be, um, while the system itself is meant to be more customer centered design, and as when we were explaining it and training people on it, that is an emphasis that we need to um, put forward. Really, I see our training as more of the nuts and bolts. How do you do this in order to get the, the system um, working for the people who are our staff? And so it's about meeting them where they are and um, trying to make this as painless a transition as possible, that it that they're then able to use it in a way that's going to help their customers.
Yep. And I know we talked about that close to the end of the presentation, but I do agree that there's kind of two hats or a couple of hats we all get to shuffle on and off. One is from the customer perspective and you all's experience with the customers, and the other is definitely ensuring that we are giving the career planners and the people who will be using the 2.0 system from kind of the practitioner point of view, what they need in explanation and training to make sure that it's well received. So I think that that's a really good point and one that I think today's presentation and the next week's presentation and how it's laid out will meet both of those kind of hat needs, as you will. Does anyone else have any thoughts? And I'm going to open that up not just to our trainers, but our OET staff or Gina or Kelly. Do you have any additional thoughts on the webinar and how it overlaps with our work with 2.0?
I think the biggest thing that I took away is, a lot of what she talked through with the customer-centered design is exactly a big way that we approached building the system too. So whenever we've been having you all use personas, um, we used those to help develop the system as well. So constantly thinking through what it looks like from a customer standpoint so that we walk through all of those different options and what that might look like.
Yeah. And I'd also add the user acceptance testing to that, ensuring that the usability of the system is really first and foremost in our mind as we kind of finalize everything. David?
Well, I think to be honest, I think most career planners are customer-centered focused. I think the challenge that I'm having as a trainer is that it's still early in understanding the new IWDS 2.0, that the old philosophical statement, you can't see the forest because the trees are in the way. It's hard to envision the customer-centered applications of the new software until we understand how it works. And we're getting there. Every week it's a little better as we test new pages. We're getting more familiar with the screens. We can appreciate the end goal because it is about the customer, but the trees are definitely big and blocking the view right now.
I think that's a really good point and a great segue to what we'll talk about today. So I'll keep it moving. If anybody else has any other thoughts, I know Lisa, you put in the chat, it's more of a conversation instead of a checklist. And I agree, and we'll kind of talk about that as we keep moving. And Crystal has added looking for pain points. Yes. So again, I think all of this is really helpful feedback for our conversation that we'll have in a few minutes. So we shared the last couple slides on the 30th. We met with the directors of each LDA to ensure they understood kind of the system development, and that they also understood what may be changing in their local areas. So the next slides are kind of you've heard the themes. We've talked about them a lot. We anchored them in a lot of our conversations, but we wanted to make sure we shared them with you as we keep going. So we used customer-centered design in the development of IWDS 2.0, to Kelly's point. We really want to shift the approach of the system to more understanding people's experiences and their pain points to support them in their journey. And what does it feel like to navigate government services when you're looking for work? So we really thought about that as especially throughout the self-service portal and assessment portions that we'll talk about. You can go to the next slide, Gina. So what does this mean? So we built the system with the customer in mind. Again, you've seen these before, but we focused intensely on how the system feels and works for someone who uses it, both from a career planner perspective and for a customer experience. So at the bottom, we wanted to make sure that the customer experience was clear and easy. And then in addition to that, we wanted to make sure that career planners and people at the local levels and at the state level have intuitive tools. And the system was built, I can't say intuitively more, but really with using technology to help support both our customer and our career planners. So again, you've seen this sentiment before, but this is the slide we shared with the directors. When we developed this system, we looked at everything and we thought about what makes sense at this point. Does this feel overwhelming, and what does a customer need right now? So we really kept some things moved some stuff around, and then overall ensured that we were meeting, federal reporting and performance and all of that as we built the system. So we broke it apart and we rebuilt it. So we analyzed everything, we reordered some things, and then hopefully we removed barriers and then again validated that we were meeting policy to make sure that customers were moving forward without any barriers, and that staff had more personalized support for each portion of the system. We also are ensuring that data is captured for compliance and reporting, which I know has been flagged from you all as, a high priority and also one that we're very empathetic at the state level. So this will mean clear steps and expectations, fewer repeated questions. We want to make sure that everything supports the goals of the customer and is respectful of their time, as well as has the system's been built with intuitive navigation to make sure that we are, meeting those needs and goals, but also doing it in a way that, isn't confusing. Gina, if you could move to the next slide. All right, and at that, I'm going to pass it over to Gina, who's really been working with the how will we teach this portion. So, Gina?
Thanks, Sarah. And thanks for, telling that story again of the development of IWDS 2.0, because this is a story that all of you will be telling in your local areas. And I think someone put in the chat, we're building the plane as we're flying it. So you're seeing this story sort of evolve and, get strengthened and improve as how we're talking about where the system has been and where it's going. And we want you to see that evolution because, this is going to be a story that you are telling too. You're going to be an important part of this sort of communication process out to career planners. So today we're going to take a look at the IWDS 2.0 customer self-service portal. We're going to be looking at this brand new feature in IWDS 2.0. And we're going to be looking at it today as an introduction to this feature. This is not a day when we are going to practice looking at every screen in the system, but it's a day when we're going to be looking at the big picture here. So we're going to talk about what is the customer self-service portal in IWDS 2.0? How does it improve the customer experience? How do customers use and navigate through the self-service portal at a high level? And then we want to talk with you about what questions local career planners are going to have about the customer self-service portal and that we might want to incorporate into their training. So think of what we're looking at today as sort of a first draft of what we might share with career planners, and then we want to get your feedback on it when we get to the end of today. So next Tuesday, so today we're covering the self-service portal from the perspective of customers. Next Tuesday, we will talk about the whole career planner intake process and what that looks like from the career planner perspective, how the self-service portal changes the intake process for career planners and other AGC staff, and what state policies are going to change to align with both the self-service portal and just what intake is going to look like under IWDS 2.0. So for today, we're going to try to put on our, today we're going to be curious about how the customer engages with this part of the system. And then next week, we'll think more deeply about how career planners engage with this part of the system. So before we move on, I'm curious how many of you have seen this image before. Just raise your hand if you have seen this before. I'm seeing a couple of hands. What is this image telling us?
Two people can look at the same thing and see something different.
Exactly. I was going to say, you look at it from one direction is a 6. Somebody look at it from a different direction is a 9. Anyway, you put that 6, it could be either 6 or 9.
That's right. Is either of these people wrong?
They're both
No,
right.
They're both right, depending what you're working on. I would take the nine if it's millions. If they can keep the six.
That's right. From each person's point of view, they are interpreting this image correctly, and if they disagree with each other, um, they benefit from being curious about why the person is viewing it differently, right? Like the best way to understand each other is to get curious about what this shape looks like from their point of view. So we want to keep that in mind today because intake looks really different from a customer perspective. These early touch points between a customer and the WIOA Title I services look really different from the customer's perspective than what they look like from the career planner's perspective. So we want to keep that in mind as we're thinking through today. So with the customer perspective, as they're approaching these early touch points with the system, is, they are considering their options, right? They've recognized that they have a problem. They've recognized that they're in a place, and whether that problem is they're not making enough money, they need a new job, they're looking for a different kind of career, whatever that problem is, they've recognized it. They've decided to look for help. They've decided to potentially ask for help. And they have found the workforce system as part of that journey. And they're thinking through their options, right? They're wondering what services are available to me? How are they going to help me meet my needs? They're doing a lot of exploration. They might be doing a lot of work online. That might be visiting an AJC. That might be if they've gone to a physical location, they're talking maybe to welcome desk staff. Maybe they're accessing the resource room. They're also worrying, right, about bills or housing or food or whatever their pressing challenges are. Their family. They might be desperately searching for their birth certificate or other documents that someone's asking them for, and they're asking for help. So sort of the mindset of, some things that are happening from the customer perspective. From the career planner perspective, they're sort of in this intake mindset, right? That this person is at one step in a process that the career planner is very familiar with, right? So they might be thinking, how can I share useful information? How can I build trust with this individual and demonstrate respect? How can I connect this customer to services as quickly as possible so that they stay engaged and feel like they're making forward progress? And the career planner is doing very different things than the customer, right? They might be welcoming, they might be explaining, they might be offering choices. They might be working to use strengths-based language to bring this customer further into that trusting relationship where they're willing to and see the value of WIOA services. And IWDS 2.0 is designed to meet the needs of both. They're designed to meet both these needs here and these needs and actions and thoughts here from both the customer and the career planner. So today we're going to cover IWDS intake modules from both perspectives. Today we're just going to talk about from the customer's perspective, and then next Tuesday we're going to talk about it from the career planner perspective. So the customer self-service portal is a new entry point into the system for customers that lets them independently begin the process of accessing WIOA Title I services. They can use that portal to answer pre-screening questions, to fill out the application, to upload documents using their computer, using their tablet, using their phone, whatever device. They can do it from home, on the go, in the AJC, or other sort of service delivery point. And the option for staff-assisted experience is always also available. So everywhere online, everywhere that someone is engaged online, there's always a button that will take them to a page where they can find in-person support. So how is this going to improve the customer experience? What do you all think? How, if you think about how your customers, about how folks interact with the system, what are some ways that this more independent way to access these early stages of moving into accessing services, how might these improve the customer experience? What are your thoughts? You can put it in the chat. this starts to mirror the ways that we access other kinds of services and support, right? Like we're all familiar, if we go to the doctor, they might ask us to complete some early information online. The language is very it's customer facing, the questions that they see in the self-service portal. It translates the information that we're required to gather on our end into language and experiences that make sense to the customer. They can have those questions right in front of them while they're gathering their documentation at home. They have other access points. What other thoughts do you have?
Well, I think it just reduces the amount of stress that they're already under. If they're able to do this sort of on their own time, without sitting in front of somebody and thinking, oh, did I not bring this? And also, it's just less putting them on the spot, where if they come into your office and all of a sudden you start asking for all of this stuff, they're kind of they're a little sort of defensive, and they're nervous. I mean, in some cases they're not. I mean, they're nervous. I mean, they're in a situation where it's new to them, but as much as they can do in a familiar way, the more likely they are to go through with it.
Yeah, that's great. Anybody else?
Tori also put in the chat that she likes the idea of it being mobile friendly, and she believes that it allows customers to be more involved in their career planning at their own pace.
Yeah, thanks. So let's think a little bit about, so these were, some of the intentions of this redesign. They respond to pain points that were identified as part of the design process for IWDS 2.0. So let's look a little bit more closely into what the customer experiences. You may remember a few weeks ago, we sort of introduced the idea of the customer journey, and we're sort of in this consideration phase here. So we're going to look at what the customer experiences in this phase. And just to give you the big picture, you've sort of seen this image before, but to give you the big picture of what happens, the doorway into this experience is a short form on a workNet job seeker page. So we'll take a look at that. From there, that is going to take them to pre-screening questions, which include only the most essential questions necessary to understand whether they're in the realm of eligibility for WIOA and to flag urgent supportive service needs, urgent barriers. They have an orientation video that they watch so that everyone gets the same information about WIOA Title I services, the essentials, and then they have an opportunity to complete the application and upload their eligibility documents. They can do all of this from home before the system requires a touch point with a career planner. Optional touch points available along the way. But this is how far they can get before the system requires them to connect with a career planner. So we're going to look at each of these stages in a little more detail. We're going to show you some screenshots, some of which you've seen and some of which you might not have seen yet. So the first step here is this self-service form that's going to be available on the workNet job seeker page. It's still under development. This is not a finalized page yet, but it will be there. So the purpose of this is to provide high-level information about WIOA programs and services. It invites the customer to complete that form if they're interested in learning more and seeing if they might be eligible. As you'll see, it's very short. It's just a few pieces of biographical information and an email address. After they submit this form, the system automatically emails them a secure link to the pre-screen in IWDS 2.0. And as we've said before, and we'll say many times again, at every step, there's an I need local help button. Here is an early draft of what this form might look like. Again, this is still under development, but you can see that they're on WorkNet, so that you can imagine many different ways that they might have arrived here. So they could have arrived here through social media. They could have arrived here through navigating WorkNet. Somebody could have sent them this link. They fill in just a few things: their name, their email, their zip code. They're going to tell us their date of birth so that the system starts to understand where they fit within our programs, and a phone number. And they're going to accept their terms and hit submit. And that is going to trigger an email that will then take them to the pre-screen. So they submit that form, they get an email, they open up the email, they're going to get here to the pre-screen. So now they're in IWDS 2.0, but they're not in it the way you think of being in it as a career planner. They're in it, but they haven't logged in, right? There's no login here. So the purpose of the pre-screen, which is a new feature, is to gather the most essential information from the customer at the earliest point of contact to figure out whether they're likely eligible for WIOA Title I services, if they have immediate needs that need to be addressed, and to guide them to the appropriate services. It takes 10 to 15 minutes to fill out, and it confirms that basic eligibility. So, do they have those basic eligibility characteristics? Do they need employment, training? Do they have barriers and supportive services needs? And it really reduces unnecessary steps. It pulls out from the IWDS 1.0 workflow things that are not essential at this stage so that they get to the right staff or the right self-service options as quickly as possible. I think you all have probably already seen part of this, but what's in the pre-screen, and I know you're going to see it more in greater depth on Thursday. So what they see in the pre-screen module and I'll show it to you first. It looks like this. This is the customer-facing pre-screen. As you'll see next week, there's a slightly different display for career planners who are logged in as career planners. But this is the customer-facing pre-screen. You can see that it has some friendly language here and simple language telling them what to do. And you can see that when they click on pre-screen, it's going to take them through this set of information gathering topics that are over here on the left. So what's in there? So there's the introduction, explains what to expect. They will capture high level what the customer hopes to achieve, high level questions about their circumstances, including whether they need transportation or childcare, other urgent needs that might prevent them from accessing services or moving forward, their current skill levels, general eligibility questions and program eligibility questions, and high-level demographic data. And then the customer can review and confirm their responses. So like I said, this is not deep training in how to navigate the system, so we're not going to go through screen by screen right now. You will do that in user testing later this week. But this is what the customer sees and the kind of language that they see that's customer-facing language that helps them move through this pre-screening process. I think there might be something in the chat, so I'm just going to check really quick.
Cassie asked a question about step 3, and I wanted to make sure that we talked about this point before we kind of dove into that specific question. Or Gina, we can answer it now if you want to.
But I think we'll get there. We'll get there, and then we'll loop back.
So we see Cassie, we're just going to wait just to put a pin in it for right this second.
So why did we design IWDS 2.0 this way? I think that's a question that career planners might have at any point along this introduction to this new avenue for intake that customers have. So I think that the most critical one is that only the most essential questions are asked during these early phases of the process, leaving other deeper questions that take more time and require a higher level of trust, leaving those questions for after eligibility has been determined, and we're moving into the next step of the process. So it's also really respectful of customers' time. They're able to do this on their own if they want to, which means that the time that they spend in an AJC can be spent, more substantively on getting them to the next step of accessing services. This process, and we'll look at it a little bit more when we look at the application process, pulls out only the essential questions for establishing eligibility, which means that there's a more consistent eligibility determination process baked into this across all AJCs and LWIAs in the state. And we know that this sort of corrects for what naturally happens in systems over time, right? In any system where you have these compliance requirements that you have to meet on the back end, you're trying to sort of hold two truths at once, right? You're trying to hold your customer facing service delivery over here, but then in the back room, you're also trying to meet all of these compliance requirements in the back. And over time, that always gets clunky. And this is sort of a reset so that there's we know that we're being compliant, but we're also able to be very customer service oriented and customer focused in our work. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay. When the pre-screen module is complete, the system does sort of a preliminary calculation about potential eligibility. If the pre-screen determines that the customer might not be eligible for WIOA Title I services, it's going to tell the customer that in a very customer-facing and customer-friendly way and provides information on how to reapply or how to find local assistance. Career planners and other staff are going to have access to the pre-screen data on the back end. So local workforce areas will be able to see who is engaging in this pre-screening and who may have been flagged as potentially not eligible. And then local workforce areas are going to have the option to use that information for targeted outreach or engagement if they want to do that. But there's not going to be a requirement to engage with anyone, with all of the potential people who are filling out a pre-screen but maybe not making it to the next step. If the system assesses that the person is potentially eligible, then the customer receives a prompt indicating that they might be a good fit for WIOA, but without committing to that. And then the next step is they're going to be prompted to watch an orientation video. So they'll submit the pre-screen, they will get a link to watch the orientation video. That ensures that everybody gets consistent information about services and requirements and maybe answers some questions that then will motivate someone to complete the application. So the sort of the common questions that someone might have before agreeing to spend the time that it's going to take now to complete the application. So now I'm going to go back over here to your question about the video. So I think, Cassie, that I answered your question. So there isn't a push prompt to an individual career planner after step 3. The push prompt comes after the application is complete. However, local workforce areas will have an area of IWDS 2.0 where they can go and see who is in this stage. Toriana.
I had a question. So you said they'll be after the link in the pre-screen, if they're determined eligible, they'll be sent to watch an orientation video. And then you said the orientation video that's going to be sent to them via a link. So then will that just allow them to, will the system track if they actually watch the video or not before they move forward to the next step 4, or is it just going to be you get the link and then that's it? The system still allows them to move forward to step 4.
I have heard the developers. So Kelly, do you want to answer that?
Well, sorry, Gina. We are currently figuring out how to ensure that they've watched it, Tori. So to your exact point, because we're using this orientation video to ensure that they know about the program. We want to make sure that they've actually seen the information before they're prompted to fill out an application. Systematically, they're trying to figure out how to do that. But yeah, that is the goal, to make sure that there's some way that we're kind of controlling the information before they go on to the next point. Because we agree that that's important.
Great, thank you.
Rory?
Oh, thanks. I started to put the question in the to chat to save time. But I did have another question actually. So now that I think about it, so I'm sorry, I just was going to ask you to repeat. So after they view the video, is there a link? And you've mentioned, I think that there is, that there are, points along the route, along the roadmap, where if they do need local assistance, maybe understanding, or not necessarily multilingual, but maybe that, but understanding the questions or not sure how to answer, if there's different points, where they would, at what points are they made aware of how to contact local staff, and then how are local staff alerted to the fact that a new job seeker, new customer has begun the process and is moving forward and is ready for that, being connected with, at that point, local job center staff person, because the pre-screen and all these tools, as you were asking in the beginning, and as people were saying, it's great. I think from the, and Joel had mentioned, it's an anxious time for people, especially when they're out of work or if they've been laid off. So that whole, the typical, like, I fill out a form, or I'm going to sign up for an orientation at a local job center or something. And then, the waiting, so the pre-screening is nice because it in that sense, it's got potential, because it's, and these tools where they can get started, because I'm not a psychologist or anything. I'm just saying, like, from working with dislocated workers and rep response events and that over the years, there's that feeling that, like, you're getting somewhere, that, like, well, gosh, when do I start? When can I start talking about this? When can I start figuring out how to get back to work? So it's good in that sense. I think it's got, that potential where I think, the customer's going to feel like, that they're engaged, like you said, they're vested, and maybe there's more likelihood of follow through too, because they're taking the steps, toward that. But with filling this out, it's like they're getting started right away with, like, okay, I'm seeing I'm getting responses, I'm seeing results that, it's a process, but it's not like you're waiting in uncertainty. So having that, but that works, to a point, but at some point, knowing where, we get to, talk to a real person, as they say, at some,
Yeah.
so that's kind of why I was asking that. And those were just kind of my thoughts on that, my ramblings, if you will, on that, I guess. Sorry.
So no, that's a really good point, Rory. And so next week, I'm going to defer a little bit on your question of, like, what is the career planner getting as the person is moving through this process? Because next week we're going to take a deep dive into what the career planner experience is. And then I'll be able to show you. Right now, I don't have screenshots to show you kind of like what the career planner might be getting access to. So we're going to defer that piece. But every step of the way through these screens, the individual has this opportunity to find local help, which is going to pull up their, I think, Sarah, it pulls up the service locator, right? It's going to help them find their local AJC.
It's actually a new modal that's being developed or in
Yeah.
development that will allow them to, like, find an AJC closest to them. But yes, they'll have that little button I'm wearing my customer hat now. They'll have that little find local help button anywhere throughout this process, this self-service process. And so, to Crystal's point about for walk-ins, we will talk about that. We've built that into kind of the career planner portion of this portion, but if we're going to focus right now on just when people walk or are doing this on their own, they'll watch that orientation video kind of after that pre-screen is complete. But we do understand that they're going to be people who interact with the system who aren't just accessing it online by themselves, that you all are going to have to, take into account. And we've taken into account what happens if someone walks into the AJC and they want help today.
And Rory, also, just to be clear from your other question that you put in here, after the customer watches the video, they get access to the online application, which they could then decide if they're having this, independent customer self-service portal experience. After they watch the video, they're going to get access to the application, which they are going to continue filling out, or they could choose to ask for local help, but they will not be prompted to make a required appointment with a career planner until after they've completed the application, their portion of the application, the parts of the application that they can do on their own. Okay, so we've watched the orientation video. It's great. It's under development, but we imagine that we've watched this compelling and short and fabulous orientation video. And now what happens next? So once the orientation video is watched, the customer has access to the Title I application. They're also going to get a downloadable preparation packet that is going to give them a list of the documents that they're going to need to submit as part of the application. So they'll have like a handy desk aid so that they can go find the documents they're going to need for this part of the process. So here we are now at step 4, which is complete the application and upload eligibility documents. So as a reminder, all of these steps are steps that the customer could decide to complete on their own. Or they could walk into an AJC, they could talk to someone at the welcome desk, and then they could decide to sit down or sit at a kiosk and do this process. So let's talk a little bit about the application. So the purpose of the application is to determine eligibility for WIOA Title I services. So that means that the federal reporting questions and any suitability assessments that sometimes got like intertwined here as part of this process have been removed from this stage of the customer's journey, this stage of intake, and they're only going to be asked later in the getting started assessment. I alluded before, right, to having pulled out questions where they don't have to be asked at this point of the process, where they benefit from being a little further into the relationship, where a little more trust has been established, and where the customer has agreed and is ready to move forward. So this is a streamlined application, different from what might be currently happening in some LWIAs. The application also uses adaptive logic, so it only displays the questions that are relevant to the customer and their circumstances based on information they've already provided. So for example, an adult who has provided a birthday that indicates that they are older than the eligibility parameters for WIOA youth is not getting any of those questions. Or some questions in the application must be answered in the presence of a career planner. Those questions are sort of like turned off for the customer self-service portal. So there are a few questions that have to wait until the individual has come in and met with a career planner, and they're only accessible on the career planner side of the application. So they'll only be completed with the career planner or during eligibility certification if the customer is completing this application independently. So this is what the application looks like. As you can see, it's friendly. Again, if we set the expectation about how long it could take, what kind of questions they're going to be answering, and that they can choose to upload documents. They don't have to. They can come and work with a career planner to do that. And then you can see that it's going to be, and then this application pulls information in from questions that have already been answered in the pre-screen. So just like Sarah said, no questions are repeated, right? If the customer already answered that question, it gets pulled in. So in this way, it's way better than what happens when you go to the doctor's office, right? It feels like you're always answering those doctor's office questions 5 times. So it gets pulled in to streamline that experience. And again, here's our famous Find Local Help button, which anyone can do. And again, some encouragement to just do your best in answering these questions. So again, why is it set up like this? This streamlined approach ensures that only the most essential questions are asked now, being really respecting the customer's time, allowing them to upload documents from home so that they can do that in the moment where they are stored, and allows them to get more quickly into an enrolling service. I'm going to just check the chat because I can see there's a question in here. When they upload the document, does the system make sure that it's a clear, compliant upload? What a great question.
Yeah, so Sandy, I'm not sure if the system will be like, oops, it's blurry. But when we talk next week about what the career planner will see, the career planner will be able to say like, oh, I see you tried to upload your driver's license, but it looks like, your Starbucks gift card. So that's probably not great. So I'm not sure, and Kelly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the system has like a wobble setting, but the career planners will be able to check on those documents to make sure that they're the right ones. Um, so a customer file doesn't have like a blurry image or something like that. They'll be able to make sure that it's the right document and that it's clear.
Also, let me shine in on that. When it comes to documentation, we do want clarity. Um, on the system, it should be required that y'all make sure they know that it's clear, that somebody can see it. Don't send us something all bent up or because we're not here to babysit them to some degree, but we want clear documents. So when audit time comes, the people who's auditing our file, they're like they want to make sure it's clear and precise as well. They want to make sure the birthdays is correct, that it match what's on the application and stuff. So would there be something to tell the customer that your documents that you upload, please take your time and make sure it is clear so somebody on the other end could, read it properly?
Well, and we're developing our preparation packet information right now, which is like, what will they need to bring? What do you need to start finding? So that is really helpful, like a note to add in that portion. And I'm gonna ask Kelly to make sure that's added to our notes for the prep packet, to say like, hey, because we'll need to see this for, your customer file, and because this ensures that you're eligible, please make sure that you're not using like a crumpled up version of whichever. And then to Michelle's point, will the system determine if its document is valid? The system won't be able to like scan the document and say this driver's license expired 2 years ago. But the career planners will be able to view the document and see if it's expired, or to see, for instance, they said that they uploaded a driver's license and again, it's their Starbucks gift card that they just can't give away. So I think that we can make it as clear as possible in the directions to make sure they're having the right documentation, to make sure that the information is clear when they upload it. But we do and will be asking from the career planner perspective that they review those as kind of the career planner final steps. But from the customer perspective, we can give them information to ensure or help ensure that those documents are being uploaded properly.
And when we
Okay.
talk next week, we'll talk a little bit about the career planner workflow, which if a career planner has an appointment with someone who has completed the customer self-service portal application, there's going to be some steps the career planner takes before that meeting, right, to prepare for that meeting. So we'll talk a little bit about what might happen in there and what a career planner might do in that preparatory phase if they find that the documents are not valid or not clear. So, Hallie, you're asking about your local forms. So, something that, Sarah, do you want to take that or do you want me to take
Yeah.
that?
So, hold on, I'm just finishing reading it really quick. No. So this system is now going to take the place of local pre-screening, initial application, all of that forms. We've looked at all of the, federal guidance, et cetera, to make sure that all of the questions we're asking are going to meet the requirements, both from the state level and the local level. But we let the directors know, 2 weeks ago, that this system is now replacing that, so that we are having a uniform approach to customer-centered design, and that we're ensuring that customers, no matter if they're in Chicago or Champaign or a different place, they're getting the same information, they have the same forms, and they have the same process, which Gina just laid out.
So at that briefing with the local workforce leaders, DCEO shared that they'll need to update their local policies and procedures to align with this new process. So
Yeah,
no longer local forms are on their way out.
and I'll also add that there was a question that like a local area had an eligibility checklist or something like a flow checklist that they use for helping career planners understand procedures and understand policies. If that is what you will need in your area, kind of like an internal facing document, like a checklist or something like that, that's fine. We're just not going to be asking customers any longer for additional forms that vary from LWIA to LWIA. That portion is going to be the system that we're walking through.
All right, I'm going to keep us moving. So, in the final stages of the application is the moment where folks will be invited to upload their required documents. Again, they don't have to do that here, or they could try, or they could start but not finish. Documents can be uploaded by the customer or by the career planner, or the customer can say, "I need help doing this." So it's an option, but it's not a required step for the customer to sort of complete their self-service portal activity. If they're on their own, if the customer is in a doing this in a self-service fashion, then the system will then prompt them to make an appointment with their local office to complete the registration intake process. So this is as far as they can get on their own. Their next step prior to eligibility determination is an in-person meeting with a career planner. So next week we'll talk about what information WIOA Title I staff get as customers might be moving through this self-service portal, and sort of how they find, how they can know that someone has completed an application and needs this appointment. This is different from what career planners are currently doing. So we know that, and we know that people are going to respond to this change in different ways. They're going to have a lot of different valid feelings and reactions to that. Next week, we're going to take a deeper dive into what it looks like from the career planner perspective. And all along the way, today and next week, and all of our meetings, we're going to talk about how can we best convey this and train folks in this in a way that is supportive of them, acknowledges the reaction to change, and helps them get to a place where they're feeling comfortable with this new process. I see a couple comments. Yes, David. So remember, like way back in January, we said at some point we're going to ask you to map out your current process and compare it to the new process and identify where there are going to be like pain points or challenge areas or where career planners are going to need support. So we're still going to do that together, and that's going to help with your comment here, David, about managing that transition. Okay, last couple of slides. So I think this brings us to the end of our introduction to the self-service portal. So what we want to do now is kind of get some feedback from you. We know that there's going to be a lot of questions about what is my job in all of this. We're going to talk about that next week. But when we think about just with our customer hat on and just thinking about the customer self-service portal, what questions do you think your career planners might have about the customer portal? If you were to imagine your career planners getting something like what we just shared, what do you think might be missing, or what do you think we might want to do differently to talk about the self-service portal with career planners? Excuse me.
I also think you all's questions are helpful to understand like what career planners may be asking. I'm gonna answer Cassie's question in the chat. When are we officially done with local forms? So policy needs to be kind of set, and then the system needs to be ready. So on July, to Gina's point, we want to make sure you all are ready. Every local area is ready. That's why we talk to the directors before talking to you. This change is coming. This is what it'll affect. These are the things. We plan to keep having those conversations. The regional managers are aware, so they have somebody to reach out to. But until the new system is ready to be to go live July 1, you still have to have customers entering into into the system. So if those local forms are the only way that you can get them into the system currently, then you need to keep using those until there's new policy or the system's ready. Now, if you want to start phasing those out to make way for the new system in a way that would still allow customers to enter in and receive services, that's a different conversation. But we don't want, after today's conversation, you to go back to your AJC and be like, we're done with all of this. And then there's no way customers can kind of receive services on that end. Crystal put, they will want to know exactly when they are going to be notified that a customer exists. And that's a really good point. They'll want to know if in person with a career planner cannot upload documents and want to bring in documents, will career planners need to scan in their documents and go into the customer profile and upload it for them? We'll talk about that on the career planner side of things, like how to interact with the customer profile. And I think that will also depend, Kelly, on what we finally decided, like how documents can be uploaded. Is it a picture or is it scanning? But those will need to be tied to the customer profile. David?
Gina asked the question how career planners are going to experience the customer portal. I think they're no different than us. I think they'll want to see it. Like the orientation video, I think that will reduce a lot of people's anxiety. A lot of career planners will see that and go, oh, this will be great because it'll be consistent, a consistent message. I think most of our customers in WEO 15 are all familiar with going to our website, filling out a more extensive pre-application form than they're probably going to see here. So I think career planners will have no trouble making this transition, but it'll be helpful when they know what it looks like and what that experience is like for the customer.
Great, thanks, David. Sandy, you asked a question about how data in the old system will get to the new system by a feat of technological magic. The data will be imported into the new system when on the go live date. So on July 1st, when we make this transition, the existing customer data will be in IWDS 2.0. Any other questions? I'm going to move us into this last slide, which is the homework. So when your career planners get this training, which they are going to get this level of introduction to the system through a virtual webinar before they come to you for in-person training. When they do that, they are going to be given a homework assignment of going and completing the self-service portal as a customer. So that they had that experience from soup to nuts. You cannot exactly do that right now because some of these things are still in development. But on Thursday, as part of UAT, so this week as part of UAT, there's going to be a walkthrough of the pre-screen and the application, and you're going to have access to a form that will trigger the pre-screen prompt. So we ask all of you to make sure that you set aside the time to do UAT this week and to complete the process as a customer so that you see in this stage of the development what that process looked like, which it will not include the orientation video because that's not done yet. And Kelly, do you want to say more about that?
Yes. I'm sorry, Gina, you said for this week for Thursday?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
So this week you all would have seen that we do have the customer application that we're going to be putting into UAT. We did, given the holiday on Thursday, add a Wednesday option. So knowing some of the offices around the state are closed and some are open, so you have the option to go to both of those, if you would like, or you can just go to one. But we wanted to make sure that we can't really afford to miss any local ones for the, as we approach go live. But then also I think the UAT for our last one is rounding up too. So if you haven't gone in and done that, make sure you get that done and provide the feedback. But we'll be introducing a new round and new for the customer application tomorrow.
Yes, so please do that before next Tuesday so that when we come together to talk about what intake looks like from a career planner perspective, you are sort of fully grounded in what the customer experience is through the self-service portal. That's going to make next week, they'll just allow us to get into a deeper level of discussion because you'll have seen all of the questions and all of the prompts and all of the directions that a customer could experience. But I think we're at time. I see Robert and David have their hands up. So Sarah, do you want to take another couple minutes?
Yeah, I do have to hop pretty quickly, but I want to make sure that we answer any questions that we really need to get to. So Robert or David?
I'll let David go first because he had his hand up first.
Thank you, Robert. Has there been any discussion with the community colleges about marketing, so to speak, this new WIOA eligibility portal? That's always been a recruitment issue, is how do we get that web address? How do we get that site in the hands of people who are wanting those services? Some community colleges, some departments do a great job of referring to WIOA. Some still don't know anything about us.
Yeah, so as a part of kind of my role, I get to talk about all the things we're doing at OET with other partners. So this conversation has come up at the WIOA PD committee. And as plans and training and the system gets closer to going live, we'll make sure that the webinars and an appropriate webinar are geared towards our partners so they understand, where they can go or send people to if they have questions about WIOA services. But that's the good thing about being all online. We can kind of send them to one URL, and it won't make it as confusing.
I was going to just ask about the training tomorrow when you said we were going to do this application training on the UAL or the UAT, I mean. And yes, our office is somewhat closed tomorrow, Thursday, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be part of the meeting. So are we going to do both the 10 to 11:30 meeting and that UAT as well? So most of the day you want us to be concentrating on that UAT?
And Kelly mentioned this, but if your office is out celebrating, I can't remember which holiday on Thursday, and can't make it to the Thursday 10 to 11:30 meeting, they have given the opportunity or opened up a different meeting on Wednesday for people to come to so they can understand what that UAT is. Now, if you do have work on Thursday, you can just come to the Thursday meeting. And I'm going to ask Kelly to make sure that that's correct. Lincoln's birthday. Thank you, David.
Yes, you guys should have both invites on your calendar, like the regular Thursday one at 10 a.m. And then I believe I got it out to everybody for Wednesday. It's called Wednesday option for local discovery. So that should be on there too. But if you don't see it, let us know.
Yeah, please get
This is
in to
on my
one of the
calendar.
UAT meetings. Yeah, Thursday or Wednesday, to Gina's point, we really want to make sure you all understand what the customers are seeing. So that way next week when we talk about what a career planner is going to see, you understand we can talk about the system kind of in this way, but until you're in it and kind of clicking the buttons, at least in my brain, it doesn't really make sense. So please, please participate in that. That's going to be the best way we can help kind of everybody has the same understanding. But I do have to.
Quick question before you. How can I get the link so I can send it to my career advisor so they can see how to operate in it? It's better for them to see it than for me always to tell them. They're not getting that hands-on just to see how does it work. And they somewhat kind of confused.
Well, for the UAT, I connect with Kelly if there's additional people in your area who'd like to be a part of it. The final link for, what a customer will see, what we talked about with the job seeker page through the pre-screening, those won't be available yet. But if you would like additional people in your area to be a part of any of the UATs, so they can understand how things are working, we highly encourage you all get in contact with Kelly and she'll loop them in.
Thank you.
But there's no expectation, and we would encourage you not to try to start training your career planners right now because we would like them to have an optimal learning experience. So we'd like to start training them when the system is far enough along that they are being trained on the system as it will look for them.
That's a good point, Kelly. Gina, I'm so sorry. Okay, I do have to hop. Thank you
Yep.
all so much for your time today. If there's any questions, let me know. I think I've responded to all of you in my inbox, but thank you for today
Thank you
and we'll see
guys.
you.
Bye, everybody.